Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Kunja Bihari Gopijana Vallabha Girivaradhari Yashodanandana Brajajana Ranjana Jamuna Tira Vanachari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Gopijana Vallabha Girivaradhari Yashodanandana Brajajana Ranjana Jamuna Tira Vanachari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Gopijana Vallabha Girivaradhari Yashodanandana Brajajana Ranjana Jamuna Tira Vanachari Yamuna Tira Vanachari Yamuna Tira Vanachari Jayam Vishnupad Paramahamsa Pravijacharya Astora Shishimat His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada Ki Jayam Vishnupad Paramahamsa Pravijacharya Astora Shishimat His Divine Grace Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Goswami Maharaj Prabhupada Ki Anantikoti Vaishnav Vrinda Ki Nam Acharya Sila Haridas Thakur Ki Prem Sakaho Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shivasari Gaur Bhakta Vrinda Ki Sisi Radha Krishna Gopa Gopinath Shyam Kund Radhakund Giri Govardhan Ki Vrindavan Navadip Dham Ki Gangamai Jamunamai Ki Bhakti Devi Tulasi Devi Ki Samavaita Bhakta Vrinda Ki Nitai Gaur Premanande. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to Shri Guru and Shri Gauranga. Can you go down a little? I mean, the word for word. Yeah. The word for word. Yeah. Okay. We're reading from the Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 4, Chapter 25, text number 27. Ke ete anupata te mabata eta va lalana, subru, ka, avam, te, ahiya, pura, sara, kayete anupatayeta. Sorry, kayeta anupatayeta. Ekadasa mahabhata. Etava lalana subru. Ko ayam te ahiya purasara. Kayeta anupatayeta. Ekadasa mahabhata. Etava lalana subru. Ko ayam te ahi purasara. Kayeta anupatayeta. Ekadasa mahabhata. Etava lalana subru. Ko ayam te ahi purasara. Keta anupatayeta. Ekadasa mahabhata. Etava lalana subru. Ko ayam te ahi purasara. Anybody else? Okay, the word for word. Ke, who, ete, all these. Anupata, followers. Ye, they who. Te, your. Ekadasa, 11. Mahabhata, very powerful bodyguards. Eta, all of these. Va, also. Lalana, woman. Subru, O beautiful eyed one. Ka, who. Ayam, this. Te, your. Ahi, the snake. Pura, in front. Sara, going. A translation. My dear lotus-eyed, who are those 11 strong bodyguards with you, and who are those 10 specific servants? Who are those women following the 10 servants, and who is the snake that is preceding you? Purport by His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. The 10 strong servants of the mind are the 5 working senses and the 5 knowledge-gathering senses. All these 10 senses work under the aegis of the mind. The mind and the 10 senses combine to become 11 strong bodyguards. The hundreds of women under the jurisdiction of these senses are addressed here as Lalana. The mind work under the intelligence, and under the mind are the 10 senses, and under the 10 senses are innumerable desires to be fulfilled. All these, however, depend on the vital life force, which is here represented by the snake. As long as the vital life force is there, the mind works, and under the mind, senses work, and the senses give rise to so many material desires. Actually, the living entity is known as Puranjana, is embarrassed by so much paraphernalia. All this paraphernalia simply constitutes different sources of anxiety, but one who is surrendered unto the Supreme Personality of Godhead and who leaves all business to Him is freed from such anxieties. Therefore, Prahlad Maharaj advises a person who has taken to the materialistic way of life, which is never permanent but always temporary, to take shelter of the Supreme Personality of Godhead and leave aside all his so-called responsibilities in order to get free from all anxieties. The verse again, my dear lotus-eyed, who are those 11 strong bodyguards with you? And who are those 10 specific servants? Who are those women following the 10 servants? And who is the snake that is preceding you? So, we have been discussing this verse over some weeks. And it's the story of Puranjan. It's an allegorical narrative that is told by Narada Muni to King Prachinabharani. You know, the story is not literal, but it's like a metaphor for human life. So who are the main characters of the story? Puranjan represents the individual soul. And the city, because Puranjan could be understood as the king. And the city is the human body. And the king has a queen, and the queen represents intelligence or buddhi. Buddhi means intelligence. And the followers and attendants, they are compared to be like the senses and the desires. So, when we look at the verse itself, Ekadasi Mahabhata, there's 11 bodyguards. And what's the word for women there? Lalana means woman. And then you have the snake. So we are talking about the bodyguards, the woman, and the snake. So Puranjan is essentially the king. He's essentially asking, who are these 11 protectors? Who are those attendants? Who are these women? And who is the snake that is leading you? So that is, the 11 bodyguards are considered to be the 5 knowledge-acquiring senses, the Jnani Indriyas. Knowledge-acquiring senses meaning eyes, ears, nose, tongue, and skin. From your eyes you can see, with your eyes you can see, with your ears you can hear, and with the nose you can smell, and with the tongue you can taste, and skin means touch. So then you have the 5 working senses, which is called karma indriyas. What are the working senses? The hands, legs, speech, genitals, and the anus. So that makes 10. So what is the 11th one? What is the 11th one? The mind, the commander, the mind. So together these 11 are called Mahabhata, or powerful soldiers. They're very powerful soldiers. So all these bodyguards, they are called bodyguards. Why? Because they protect one from survival. Just like, why would you have a bodyguard? Because you're scared of death. You're scared of death. But these bodyguards, they also bind the consciousness to this world. That's the first understanding. The second point about the women, the lalana, they represent different desires or vasanas, desires. And each sense generate countless desires. Just like your eyes, you see beauty, you see, envy, so many different things. Your tongue, tastes, cravings. And your ears like to listen to gossip and praise, two things. Is that not so? Those two things are very common. So the ears are looking for gossip and praise. So the entry point for these things, gossip and praise, is the tongue and ears. The tongue you'll speak, and gossip you'll hear through your ears. So these are very dangerous senses. Very dangerous. In Vedic psychology, it's mentioned that ears receive sound. Ears receive sound. And the tongue also produces, the tongue actually produces sound, and the ears receive sound. So there's a difference. So these two things, the ears and the tongue, they shape the consciousness more than any other senses. So the most dangerous is the ears and the tongue. Because once you speak or you say something to somebody, it's very difficult to retract it. It's very difficult. So it really shapes it. So like we find the foundational teaching in the Upadesh Amrita, it's a book called The Nectar of Instruction. And it talks about the control of speech, mind, and anger. And if somebody is able to do this, able to control his speech, control his mind, and control his anger, then he is qualified to make disciples all over the world, meaning that he can instruct other people about the subject matter because his senses are controlled. It's not that he just start initiating everybody. That's not the understanding. So the understanding is that he can have an effect on people's consciousness. So why is speech so powerful? Like words create images, mental images. And the sound directly enters the mind. And the mind is in the region of the heart. There. And then that repetition creates that conditioning. So you get conditioned. The repetition creates conditioning. So therefore we have to be very careful about gossip and praise, both things. So let's talk about gossip, how it binds one's consciousness. What is gossip? What is gossip according to most of y'all? What would you think? So talking about others' faults unnecessarily? Would you say that? Criticism without purpose? Or you enjoy others' shortcomings? It's different when you're trying to correct a person to help him in the process. It's different. So there's a very strong warning from this verse that We have to be very careful. And the devotee should avoid this, especially criticizing others. Prabhupada writes it there in the Chaitanya Charitamrita. So there is like a psychological mechanism, like a step-by-step process as to how this takes place. First you hear the fault, the mind becomes contaminated. Then you kind of like repeat the fault. Then it has a deeper impression. The impression gets deeper. And then you start identifying with negativity. And then subtle pride develops because you're better than that person. That's what it tantamounts to be. Like last night I was giving a talk in a Mount Edgecombe area. And we were talking about the mind. The mind, only a devotee can have control over the mind. And that's not so easy. Even when we're chanting, how many things we think of. We may do our shopping, we may do so many things. We may do so many things while we are chanting the holy names. So the mind, to have control over the mind, it takes time. And we all, gossip, as we said, is an activity of the tongue. And so these 11 bodyguards that's mentioned in the verse, the 5 knowledge acquiring senses, and the 5 karma indriyas and jnana indriyas, and the mind, these 11 bodyguards actually becomes engaged in negativity. And there are serious consequences for that. Just like when we engage in gossip, what happens to us? Or we blaspheme, what will happen to us? Poisonous to the consciousness. That's a good point. Poisonous to the consciousness. But what really happens to you if you have poison? You'll die. So you have a spiritual death. So those who blaspheme devotees, they fall down. They lose the taste of spiritual life. Even chanting becomes dry. See, the function of the mind is to accept and reject. But when one conquers the mind, he rises above acceptance and rejection. He sees it on another level and he can deal with things. You're detached from it. Like, just like I was reading the other day about Prabhupada's disciple Alfred Ford, or Ambarish Prabhu. He sent some money at that time in the 70s to Prabhupada in India. I think he was with Prabhupada, and he was with Prabhupada, and he sent monies to India, through like bank transfer, something like that. Now sending money to India through those system, and it was a large sum of money, and that money hadn't come through for 1 or 2 days. So he went to Prabhupada and he said, Prabhupada, the money hasn't come, and Prabhupada just laughed and didn't bother about it. Because he was not affected by the money. He was detached from it. So when you become detached from a situation, you can become very happy. So your chanting becomes dry. You're battling to chant. Your minds become more critical. I'm better than others. And then gossip feeds the ego and not the soul. So let's look at praise. Praise is like a double-edged sword. 2 types of praise. Glorifying devotees and appreciating devotees. But it mustn't be done whimsically or sentiment. But it must be genuinely done from the heart. You actually glorify the devotees. That's better. But even if you glorify them whimsically or, at times, but you gradually get to the point of glorifying devotees and appreciating them. But there's a danger with material praise. You know, when there's material, you praise people on the material platform, like flattery has no limits, you know that? If you say a lady is a good cook and say, wow, you know, she want to give you more of what she cooked. You know, it's like that. Flattery has no limits. You know how it works. But we want more prasadam anyway. Yes. And your ego gets inflated. Ego. So the warning from the scriptures, the Bhagavatam, there's so many warnings. I was just studying the Ramayana recently, and I was seeing so many lessons from the Ramayana. And sense gratification is the cause of bondage. That's a warning given in the Srimad Bhagavatam. So how does praise affect you? So if someone praises you, the mind stores it. See, it gets immediately stored. And the desire arises that I want more praise. Correct? More praise. And then the identity is formed around the praise. Like once I was working in the government. So once I walked into our office and I told the person, "Good morning, Mr. So and so." Anyway, he was upset because he's Shri Raghunath ki. So he was upset because he was holding a doctorate degree. So I had to address him as Dr. So-and-so. So he said, "I'm Dr. So," whatever his name was. I don't want to mention his name. Dr. So-and-so. So I said, I apologize. But then another person came in. He said, meet Rajesh, meet Raghunath, Rajesh. That's my name in material name. He's a devotee of the Hare Krishna movement. His name is Vishnu. That person's name was Vishnu. I said, "You got a wonderful name. This you should be like, calling out your name is so auspicious." So he felt good after that, because I gave him a spiritual dimension to it. And from that day, you all never ever wished me good morning or hello and all. It was always Hare Krishna. So the identity forms around it, and we want to be introduced like that, so we may have an effect on the following. Like if we Dr. So-and-so, then it has an effect on you're thinking it's going to have an effect on the people that you're speaking to. So if you're a devotee, that is dangerous. It's dangerous. If you're a devotee, it's very dangerous. So the identity forms around this. And, we live like that, and we want people to address us like that. So the Bhagavad Gita talks about praise, that one is equal in honor and dishonor is dear to me. So how do you come to that platform of, you see honor and dishonor the same? A little difficult, right? For us. Now we are conditioned soul, we're trying. But we have to rise above that, honor and dishonor. So if somebody praises me, okay, thank you very much, thank you, And see, even Krishna likes to be praised, you know that? He feels good. Even Krishna himself. Because if you praise Krishna, he also feels good. So we also feel good, but we mustn't let it disturb our spiritual practices, that we become so proud. Hey, everybody is respecting me. And when people dishonor you, you're treated the same. So therefore, the 6th chapter of the Bhagavad Gita speaks about all this. On the 12th chapter, 6th chapter, how you come above honor and dishonor. So otherwise, when we are attached to honor and dishonor, So the mind becomes unstable. It becomes unstable. And then we land up in anxiety. Sometimes, people ask me, how was the class they gave? I say, well, good. It's okay and good. And sometimes you don't comment, you appreciate it internally and you don't comment. And then they kind of, asking you for some input indirectly also. But you can help the devotee by saying, also, by not saying anything. You can help him in that way. But if you genuinely feel so, and if you don't say it, then you may become envious also. So you must give credit where it's due. So you'll become envious. So there's so much could be spoken on this subject matter. So how do we, solve this problem when in spiritual life? So we can, replace the gossip with what? Hearing the Srimad Bhagavatam. Because the talks of Lord Krishna are very liberating. It's very pleasing to the ear and the heart. And even if we hear the same things, like we sit in the Bhagavatam class, we very respectfully sit in the class and we hear. Even if whichever devotee is speaking, we just hear the class. And I think lots of you all have those traits. You all just like to hear about Krishna. So when you hear in a lot about Krishna, you glorify the devotees. So your material praise and glorification goes away. You don't bother too much about it. Just like sometimes some people do something bad, you say, hey, just leave it, just forget it, man. So when somebody praise you, you should also still be like that. I don't worry, it's okay. You understand the point? Somebody praise you, also do the same thing. So when somebody is talking about Krishna, then, or when one hearing praise that, but this belongs to Krishna and not me. Everything belongs to Krishna. But when one is hearing gossip, let me not be absorbed in this gossip. And sometimes, during your japa time, some people start talking and then it's like the whole japa time is over. I was... when my wife died, I always speak about this. The first thing I did, I chanted all my rounds. The second thing, I had to inform my daughter that her mother is dead. And it was her birthday. It was very difficult. But then, because we chanted your rounds and then we had to break the news. So we have to be that determined that the chanting of the Hare Krishna mantra is very important. I'll speak on other subjects. Like if somebody is talking to you about gossip, then you should check, there's a filter process, which I think Guru Bhumi or somebody was speaking about that. It is true, whether it's necessary, whether it will benefit you spiritually. Or you redirect the topic, you start speaking something spiritual. Yeah, and sometimes you can't get out of some people's clutches, It's very difficult. So just take out your cell phone and, answer your cell phone or something like that. Yeah. So, when somebody is praising you, so you acknowledge it politely, respectfully, but you don't dwell on it mentally. And offer from within, internally you offer it upwards to Krishna. That praise, or to the spiritual master, like that. But, Like control of speech is the beginning of spiritual life. If you can control your speech, it's very good. Like once I went for a meeting, and it was all pre-planned meeting, and I know the two people have discussed so many things, and they already finalized everything, so I was sitting quietly in the meeting, and it was just three of us. So the person didn't know what to do, because you're not saying anything. He didn't know whether to say you good things or bad things. It was like they were getting uncomfortable. Just like how when Lord Chaitanya was hearing for 7 days, the Bhagavatam, huh? So after a while the person will get worried. But you're not saying anything. And they get angry. Leads to anger. One day I went to Newcastle to get a recommendation for a devotee to get initiated. There was like some challenges in it, but anyway we went. The guy spoke to me, the leader spoke to me for about 3 to 4 hours. I'm not saying much. He reckon, you know what, I'm getting angry because you're not telling so, you're not responding. Yeah. So, yeah. So the snake, it represents like the vital force. So why snake? A snake moves very subtly. And that is like the breath, compared to the breath. And it leaves suddenly, that's compared to death. Death. And it sustains everything silently. That's why in the verse itself, the snake represents the life force, the pran. Because, without the pran or without the life, mind stops, the senses stop, and the desires will stop. See? So there's a hierarchy, and the hierarchy is the soul, who is Puranjan, the intelligence is the queen, then you have the mind, then you have the 10 senses, and hundreds of desires, all powered by the snake, which is the life, pran. That's how it's done. So then, the mind is like the central processor. It's processing. It integrates all the sensory input. And then when it enters your mind, then you create stories or narratives. And that generates identity. So this is more psychological. I won't talk too much about that. Let's see. So why does anxiety arise? We have anxiety. Why does it arise? Too many desires. Too many. And then your mind is constantly working. There's constant stimulation. So what happens? There's no mental rest. And then you have identity confusion. Then you start thinking, am I the senses? Am I the mind? So this results in restlessness, dissatisfaction, and fear of loss. And therefore you find people in anxiety, they don't even want to come out of the rooms. Like one man, he phoned us one day, he phoned the switchboard, he phoned Prabhasini, he was worrying her about, we must bring a box of peaches for him to his house in Unit 6. And it wasn't the season of peaches, so anyway, he was worrying, and then I said we have to call him, and Jai Sachidanand was there. And so I told him, I called him up, and he said he has this like vision or something like that. So then I said, no, I asked him, what's your date of birth? He said, me so and so. What time you were born? Like he thought I'm an astrologer. So he said, you're getting some reading. I said, yeah, I'm reading that you must come to the temple and collect the peaches. And you suffering from anxiety. And he said, it's true. because he didn't want to come out. So, you fear, there's extreme fear. And then later he came. So after some months he came. And I told, when you come, you must see Jai Sachinandan. He is the local priest, so he came and saw him. It's like that. So people are scared. There's so much to talk on this subject matter. Oh, sorry, I still have time. Anybody has any questions or on the subject matter? So far what we spoke? It's not a very... Yeah. So let's speak a little bit about Prabhupada and how he dealt with things, especially about criticism. Prabhupada was very heavy about criticism. Especially in the early days, sometimes devotees, they criticize each other, they complained about the management, they engage in subtle gossip. And but Prabhupada, when he heard these things, as Saswarup Maharaj writes, he became very grave. He said strongly, why are you finding fault? Better you correct yourself. So when that happened, the whole room became silenced, very silent, and devotees felt deeply corrected. So the mood shifted from criticism to introspection. So people started introspecting themselves, the devotees, what they have. Because if we're not on the spiritual platform, and we battling to be on the spiritual platform, then obviously we're going to criticize somebody. It's an obvious thing. So Prabhupada dealt with it like that. And I remember once I was reading about one devotee went and complained to Prabhupada that the senior devotee is not chanting his rounds. And Prabhupada said, Arjuna was not chanting on the battlefield. So he was not chanting 16 rounds. He was not chanting his rounds on the battlefield. He was busy with his fighting. So what Prabhupada was saying, that senior devotee was very busy, managing and building. I didn't really have the time. But Prabhupada said that to show that, you have to see another side of it. What the devotee is involved in. But it doesn't mean you mustn't chant 16 rounds. That's not the instruction. So he responded like that. And there was a backbiting incident in Los Angeles. And you'll speak behind other people's backs, you form opinions. And Prabhupada said that backbiting will ruin everything. Everything will be ruined. And it will really harm the society. I was just saying the other day to a devotee that even if everything goes wrong in ISKCON, we will not go. We're going to be here. If we're living, we'll be here, even if everything goes wrong. We're going to be at the temple. And we have to practice. But then, the important thing about this is that you lose taste for chanting. And losing taste for chanting is not good. Like one devotee, he admitted that he was regularly finding faults with others. And then he started mentally criticizing them. Then gradually his chanting became mechanical, enthusiasm dropped, and spiritual taste disappeared. Mechanical, enthusiasm drops, and then taste disappeared. So he had this realization, and he later said and understood that my offense destroyed my taste. The taste is gone. So the lesson is that, for us to learn is that gossip blocks bhakti ras or spiritual taste. It drops. If you have anybody read the Madhurya Kadambaniya? It's an amazing book by Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur. And therein you can actually understand where you are placed in spiritual life. When you read that book, you'll find that, as you're reading, you'll say, well, I don't follow this, I follow that, I follow this. And when you analyze it and do an analysis, you'll know where you're situated in spiritual practices. Yes. And especially the 2 stages, because we already have faith. We took initiation, we're associating with Vaishnavas, we took initiation, and then all our unwanted desires are coming out. But we are now moving on to this point where we want to be steady. We want to have that steady, that firm attachment to devotional practice. We want to come to that level. And then we want to have that taste or that relish for devotional engagement. Like yesterday we were chanting for hours. Like from 9:30 till 4 o'clock or something. Yesterday, Ravindra was also leading a good kirtan, chanting, and very deep chanting, very beautiful. And then I went up to Mount Hitchcomb, then I was chanting, and I got back at midnight. We were just chanting and dancing. It was really, really very good. So that taste. So when you become steady in your practices in devotional service, you have taste. Taste come by, constant practice. You have to do it every day. Like every day we're standing for Guru Puja, we're doing the greetings, we're coming in the morning program. It's giving us that taste. If we miss it, we'll feel, Sukumari and Nikunja, Seva and all, they always been practicing for a long time and they don't like missing the Mangalarti. So it's very important. But then, Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur give a lot of obstacles. And before I came for this class, I just looked at it again of how this affects our practice. So just like at the stage of steadiness, these 5 things must be absent. One is lethargy, losing energy or becoming sluggish during chanting or meditation. That happens to us. Distraction. Like sometimes we talking here, somebody will be speaking to somebody else, one person is looking at the phone. It's all distraction. And you're thinking of mundane or irrelevant things while trying to focus on devotional practices. That's called vikshepa. That's distraction. The third one is indifference, feeling unable to be engaged in devotional service fully. Then if you're not like that, if you don't want to engage in service fully, then that is not a good sign, because then it says that's indifference. Just like you have to sometimes do the needful when the time comes, if somebody tells you to do some service, and if you think that at least you should think that if some service somebody may be absent, they may not be available, and you have to do the needful at that point. But when you allocated some service, you can't leave it and go away. That's the other thing. You can't do that. Then who's going to do it? That's also there. So if you're having this type of these qualities, you're lethargic, and another one, being dominated by anger, pride, greed, or other material qualities during practice. This is how Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur describes it. And attachment to worldly enjoyments, being overly concerned with material wealth, reputation, or senses, while trying to advance in devotion. If we have any of these 5, if we are having this, then we are not on that level of nishta. We are not on that level of steadiness. We may have one or two we are following, but these five must be absent. These five must be absent. Then taste, then he's moving on to taste, and he feels pleasure in chanting. There's no more like worldly attachments, and he's practicing, and nothing can affect his taste. So we have to come to those levels of Krishna consciousness. It's quite important. So we'll stop here and we'll take some questions. We have 5 minutes or some comments. Jai Satchidanand Prabhu, you'd like to make some comments? Anybody else? So can I ask you some questions then? We'll start with Ravindra. It's 8:24. It's 8:26, so I have 4 minutes. Okay. Hare Krishna. Srila Prabhupada ki. Supposed to Swarup.